Hey everyone in the EcommOps group. This is our weekly webinar on some Q4 shipping updates. Today's webinar is going to be really important because it's going to talk about some shipping expectations if you are planning to ship in time for Christmas delivery. And again, happy early Thanksgiving, everyone. Happy early Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. I hope everyone is prepared. Obviously, a lot of you folks are going to be prepared already for the sales in general. Whether or not you're going to be running Black Friday or Cyber Monday sales, usually during this period, people are in the buying mood. So every year we have clients who don't run anything and just scale up their ads during this time, and they actually are very successful. Obviously, if you are running some Black Friday messaging, Black Friday campaigns, Black Friday sales, you're probably going to do even better as well. Marketing aside though, make sure that you prepare for the supply chain correctly, make sure that you have enough stock, especially if you plan on shipping in time for Christmas. But all right, yeah, we can just go ahead and get started. All right, so before we actually go in detail over this document, which is an announcement that we sent over to current clients. So again, if you are not a current client and you want this document, please comment notes below and we'll have the lovely Camilla send this over to you. And if you are a current client, you should have seen this already in your client Skype groups. If you have not, and you're obviously a current client, please ask the team to send you this document, but you should have received this already. So make sure that you read this carefully. All right. Now, before we actually get started with this, I just want to give a quick update on recent price increases. So unfortunately, as a lot of you have seen or heard, there has been another price increase effective this Wednesday, actually technically today in China. For UniExpress, it's somewhere between 70 cents to $1.30 per kilogram for different countries. 4PX has also increased similarly as well as some other shipping lines. So obviously unfortunate. And a lot of folks have asked me, are prices going to keep increasing throughout Q4? I am going to be completely honest that in our experience and per our expectations, they most likely are going to increase at least one, maybe a couple times until the end of December. From past year's experience, especially last year's experience, because last year's experience is actually the most probably relevant to this year because last year is still on the tail end of some major COVID delays. That was when price increases have also increased multiple times through the season. Last year, our experience was that prices kept increasing through all of December, not every day, not necessarily every week, but I would expect that this is not going to be the last price increase, and there probably is going to be more price increases through middle to end of December. Now, the other question a lot of people ask me is, when is it going to stop? When is it going to reverse? Now, no one knows exactly what's going to happen every year. However, traditionally every year, these are Q4 peak season price increases around the world, impacted by both air freight and also last mile delivery price increases, which means that they are going to usually decrease at the end of Q4 and through Q1. So just to give you guys a note on what actually happened last year. So last year, roughly, I believe actually it was like literally the end of December, like December 31st or so. That was when price decreased for a lot of countries, particularly in the EU. However, the US did not decrease on December 31st of last year, where roughly the middle of January, I believe was January 15th or so, or 16th, that was when prices decreased for all the countries, and they continue to decrease throughout the next couple of months of last year. So just to give everyone an expectation that we do believe that prices would continue to increase through the year, but they should be able to hold steady and start decreasing at the end of December and through the middle of January. At least that's given our past year's experience. Now, that's only past year's experience, all right? These price changes are really based on market supply and demand economics, which means that I can't promise you that they are going to decrease in January, but we do expect it to decrease. And actually, a lot of our clients are, really hoping for a big price decrease in Q1 and actually scaling up then. So yeah, just a quick note on price increases and expectations there. All right, so we're gonna go over the main topic of today, which is shipping data and suggested Christmas cutoffs for shipping from China. Now, again, if you want these notes, comment notes below and Camilla will be able to send that over to you so you can see this. And by the way, if there are changes, I will update this document and note any significant updates in this group as well. So definitely follow this group and make sure that you get the correct information. If you're watching from YouTube, by the way, I'm gonna put this on YouTube the next couple of days. We're also gonna put a note, a link to this live in the description as well. So if you wanna join the discussion, ask any questions, get any notes from this webinar, go to the live link and come to this group, and we're happy to answer any questions. And as usual, if you have any questions at all, please just comment below and I'll make sure to answer them. All right, so I'm going to go through this document that we sent over to our current clients. So a little bit of a quick introduction on what's happening is that everyone knows that COVID has been a thing for quite a while, probably a little bit too long, everyone feels. And COVID has in the last couple of years just continued to cause delays in the supply chain and the logistics chain. And it has been way better versus the peak delays back in the days when COVID was at its worst. However, there are still a lot of lingering delays that have been disrupting logistics, which means that logistics overall has been a little bit more delayed than usual. And also, especially during the Q4, they tend to get even more delayed than usual. The two main reasons for some of these delays is, there are still very limited outgoing passenger flights from China. Hopefully that's going to start changing next year, but still, it's still very, very limited. And freight planes are still very backlogged by the ever increasing demand, especially during a peak period like Q4. And the other thing though, is that during this period, like every single year during Q4, and particularly these last couple of years, just last mile postal offices around the world are really strained because of that increased demand and limited capacity as well. Now, there's been huge improvements, like I mentioned, after the initial outbreak last year. However, COVID and COVID-related issues continue to cause strain on the logistics of many countries as well. And the impacts, especially on holiday shipping, are difficult to predict 100%. So therefore, it's really even more important to prepare for Christmas shipping this year. If you are planning to guarantee Christmas shipping, or you have a Christmas product that just really requires you to actually ship in time by Christmas. All right, so I'm gonna go through first how we actually conducted this analysis, and I'll go over the table with all of the details on the very bottom. Now, I will emphasize that this is our data and this is what we do to ship. This is not necessarily going to be exactly the same, and honestly, probably on average faster than if your supplier is based somewhere else, if they're not processing orders fast enough. So again, this is going to be accurate, at least in terms of predictions for our current clients if you hold stock. But if you are not using us, if you're using a different supplier, especially if they're based anywhere except for Shenzhen, where shipping is going to be the fastest, take this with a grain of salt and please work with your supplier to figure out what these times and cutoffs might be. All right, so how we actually conducted this analysis is that we took actual data from somewhat more than like 100K, probably somewhat more than that actually, but at least 100K to identify what the fastest 10% of the shipping times and the slowest 10%, so the fastest 90%, I suppose, of all shipping times for a basic estimate of the shipping range. The reason why we did that is because we took out the outliers on the very fast side, because there's always going to be some some cases where stuff just arrives incredibly quickly. The UK, for example, sometimes it arrives as fast as like 2.5 days. However, that's relatively rare, and we shouldn't use that as a baseline. On the other end, past the 90% range, you start to actually see a lot of outliers as well that a lot of times don't necessarily have to do with the consistency of the shipping. A lot of these times it might be wrong addresses by the customer didn't actually receive it on time, they weren't at home, for example, they rejected it, or there's going to be just very, very random outliers for any kind of shipping methods, even local delivery. So this top 10% to top 90% of shipping times for each country is going to be a very, very reasonable expectation of the whole range. And this is probably going to be actually more accurate than what like UniExpress is going to tell you, what a lot of other agents are going to tell you as well, because this is actually real data from us. All the delivery days data that is based in this document is based on calendar days, all right? So not business days. The only caveat here is that couriers don't really do anything. They don't really process orders on Sundays. So that's the only thing. And a lot of last mile postal services, they also don't deliver on Sunday either. So just keep that in mind, that these are calendar days, except for maybe a Sunday before or after if you get unlucky when the order ships out or when it actually arrives. All of this data is from when we actually processed and sent the orders to our couriers. This is not from when tracking numbers were generated. Now, so I want to emphasize on this point, all right? Especially if you're not working with us, it is a very, very common thing for your supplier or AliExpress seller, for example, to generate the tracking number, mark it as fulfilled, and that's when the timer starts. Now, sometimes if they don't have stock, they don't actually send out the orders when it's actually generated. So this is where you're going to have very inaccurate data if they do actually do that. Now, all this data is from when we actually processed and sent the orders to our couriers. So this is going to be very accurate. However, just note that if your supplier is doing something else, like pre-fulfilling, pre-sending on tracking numbers, is not going to be accurate. Or this is not when client or customer orders are actually placed. So this is also very, very important, right? These are the shipping dates from China. This is not when your customers place your orders. This is not when your Shopify gives us the orders, because there's going to be like some processing time as well. So just keep that in mind and prepare accordingly how you want to message to your customers. All of this data is our own data, all right? And it's from our own fulfillment center based in Shenzhen, China, which is going to have some of the fastest logistics, probably the fastest on average. We do not expect your performance to be the same for any orders that you do not use EcommOps to fulfill. Now, that's not to say that if your supplier is also based in Shenzhen, they also fulfill very fast, then very likely they're going to be very similar, actually. But don't have that expectation, even if you're an EcommOps client, if you're using someone else to kind of fulfill your smaller orders or other stores, be very wary of using this data as a baseline, because this is based on our own data from our own fulfillment center from Shenzhen. One note, and I'll show you later, is that for certain countries, we just do not have a huge volume of recent orders, or they also might be relatively new shipping countries to have a lot of confidence to give you confident shipping times. And because of that, I would rather just note where we have limited data, when we don't have hundreds of packages in the last month, for example, for these smaller countries, I would rather not give you potentially inaccurate information that has some randomness. So in these cases, in the table below, we're going to show that it has limited data, and we're not going to be able to give you an accurate projection. However, pretty much all of the main countries, you're going to have good data. All right, so, and then I'm going to talk about how we actually determine the suggested cutoff dates. So for each shipping line and country, we have added a a different buffer, between 3 days to 5+ days on top of our most recent shipping times data for the 90 percentile. All right, the 90 percentile again is the 10% slowest of the delivery times. These buffers, they were customized by us for each specific line, sometimes for each country as well. This is very much based on our many years of experience working with the couriers, paired with some of the recent data from our couriers as well, recent recommendations from our couriers as well, to place that buffer. Now, why do we place that buffer, right? So the thing is, data is always lagging, right? We have accurate data from the last month or so. However, as time goes on, as it gets into more and more of the peak season, we do expect that they are going to get slower and slower, and some lines are going to get slower than others, which is why some lines have more than 5-day buffer. So this is how we are estimating the current cutoffs right now, adding a reasonable buffer based on our experience to estimate a suggested cutoff for each country and line combination. This calculation assumes target delivery by December 24th, 2021. All right, so this is very, very important here, because you're going to have to determine, what do you actually believe Christmas delivery actually means. If you feel like getting it delivered by Christmas Eve is too tight, you're going to have unhappy customers, then then just adjust accordingly. Let me actually add this. If you are targeting an earlier delivery date. All right, every store is going to have different sensitivities on what they think that Christmas delivery actually really means. So take note of this one. As we get more data to the remainder of Q4, we may continue to update this model to get more accurate cutoffs. Now, we will try to keep a lookout on this on a weekly basis. Most of the time, there's probably not really going to be any notable changes or anything that we can be confident about. However, if there are going to be very notable changes, then, well, okay, so here for our current clients, your account management team will update you. But if there are notable changes in this model, we are going to announce it in this group as well. An example of that is, if our courier tells us that a certain country is facing extreme amount of backlog and our predictions are just way off, and unfortunately we have to move the cutoffs off, I mean, in that situation, I apologize if this model is not going to be accurate, but that is the real data coming in. And if there are those significant issues, we are going to update you as well. All right, we have a question here. What is the suggested cutoff? So I'll get to that. It's like we're going to have this data in the cutoffs in a long table below. So I'll get over that after just this intro here. The cutoffs are based from when we ship out of China. All right, this is a very important emphasis, not when your customers place their orders. So therefore, you should set your cutoffs with that in mind. These dates are not valid if you run out of stock or you do not pre-stock for some products. All right, this is also really important, whether you're working with us or not, right? You have to have stock to actually ship out effectively. So if you do not have stock and you have to wait like a week, say after Black Friday sales, to get stock, then these cutoffs are not going to be accurate. You're going to be shipping out when you actually get stock. All right, so this is very, very important. And this point here is, we do our best to suggest these cutoffs to you. They're not a guarantee. Even if you are a client, I will be very, very honest with you. We do this to help you make your decisions, but ultimately the risk is for you to take as well. These are only suggestions, only recommendations, and not a guarantee for anything, but we do try to make this as reasonable, as conservative as possible. All right, so how you should actually act on this data. So first of all, if you're shipping around this time, you really want to proactively message your customers about Christmas shipping expectations. Now, what I mean here is just communicate the expectations to your customers as soon as possible. Maybe right now, it's not going to matter quite as much because you have some time before the cutoffs, but very, very soon, and probably through Black Friday sales, customers are going to start thinking about Christmas delivery for their Black Friday orders. So one suggestion that I actually do have is you can actually adjust in Shopify uh, your shipping zones. You can actually adjust your shipping zones depending on countries or groups of countries, and actually adjust what the estimated delivery times are going to be and whether or not it's going to arrive by Christmas. This is actually something that I really suggest you do. It takes a little bit of work, but it has two benefits. One is that you are very clear with the expectations. And the other benefit is that, as you'll see in the dates later, countries have very different cutoffs sometimes. Different lines have very different cutoffs sometimes, which means that if you can actually customize what these shipping expectations are going to be by the specific country, that means that for some countries, you can actually continue to suggest Christmas delivery and probably get more sales in those countries. And for some other countries, it might be, you might want to message it a little bit earlier. Do not guarantee Christmas shipping if you're not confident it's going to arrive. Well, obviously it's up to you, but I suggest you do not guarantee Christmas shipping if you're not confident it will arrive. And if your product is particularly important to arrive in time for Christmas, if you're selling Christmas ornaments, if you're selling like children's toys, for example, we probably suggest using an even more conservative estimate for your cutoffs to be safe, because for some kind of products, like no matter what you say, it's going to be, a lot of folks are going to just assume that, or they're going to be unhappy if it doesn't arrive in time for Christmas. In this case, like if you don't feel like, I would even suggest like in your shipping method, just say like may arrive after Christmas or expected to arrive after Christmas. So you don't get a huge ton of issues after the fact for people expecting Christmas delivery. Now, one point on this, by the way, is every year, clients who have not gone through one of these Q4 seasons, a lot of times I think that people will just assume that once they say that it may not be delivered after Christmas, like their sales are just going to completely tank. Do not assume this, right? Now, obviously, if you have a Christmas product, right? If you're selling Christmas ornaments, okay, most likely you can't sell it after the cutoff. However, we see like just, I'd say most of the cases in our clients, like even if they can't guarantee Christmas delivery, they still have great sales performance even all the way through, like, let's say like Christmas Eve or so. A lot of people are still in that Christmas shopping mood. And as long as you are clear on the expectations that it may not arrive after Christmas, people like, they might still purchase for themselves, they might still purchase in general, and it's not really going to impact your sales as much as you think, but obviously test this out. All right. So don't just think that if you can't offer Christmas delivery, it's going to completely kill your sales. Another thing is, as you review these cutoffs, you want to consider if faster shipping lines within these are available to you and your margins can support it. You might want to speak to your team, speak to your supplier about upgrading your lines for the last, I don't know, a couple of days or the week of Christmas, if Christmas delivery is really important for you. And obviously it's going to be more expensive, so you really need to be aware of your margins. However, if you actually do the math, you have plenty of margin and you want to extend your Christmas guarantee for 5 days longer, and you're currently using a slower line, it is something that you can certainly consider if it actually makes sense. All right. So now, after all that, we're going to just go through the actual data sheet for these cutoffs. We're going to split it up between two. So the first part is going to be what we typically use as our EcommOps standard lines. So this is primarily going to be pretty much UnitExpress, especially for Q4. We do feel like UnitExpress is going to be the most consistent. So this is where we primarily will use. So the vast majority of our clients are going to be using UnitExpress. I expect that the vast majority of Those listening as well are using UniExpress as well. So this is going to be the most relevant for everyone. If your client, if your product requires a special line, such as like a 4PX special line or SunU, for example, for sensitive products, there's also a table below this one. A couple of clients are using this. Now, a quick note here, by the way, if you're using like something like ePacket or like AliExpress standard, I wouldn't, well, I wouldn't actually, because, those are going to be very tricky to get that consistency, throughout this period. All right, so this was just updated on Monday with our most recent data. So let's start with the UniExpress Express lines. All right. Now, one note here, by the way, if you're not working with us, be very careful that your agent is actually using the actual Express line. A lot of suppliers, they just tend to call UniExpress Express, but there's an actual Express line that is offered to these 7 countries. Now, as you see, if we look at the US, which is probably what a lot of people care about, recently it's been going between 6 to 10 calendar days or so, between the fastest 10% to the 90th percentile. It could actually be as fast as 4 days or so. On the long end, sometimes maybe like 11 or 12 days, but it tends to be extremely, extremely consistent. So for the US, we are suggesting a Christmas cutoff of December 11th. So December 11th, let me actually see, December 11th, that's actually a Saturday. So I'm going to use this as also a reminder as well. This is, again, when we actually ship out from China time, which means that depending on your time zone, it most likely means that your orders actually need to get to us on December 10th or so for us to fulfill by the 11th, which means that, that you might want to set up your guaranteed Christmas cutoff, probably depending on your time zone, either on 12:10 or 12:09 or so. Now, you really want to be mindful of exactly when that is, right? Because these cutoffs are quite sensitive. If you do miss it by 1 day, it could actually hold a lot of risk. Now, I will say that one thing is that the express lines are quite consistent, actually. Every year we have a handful of clients who really want to take a little bit more risk and push it for a couple of days. And actually every year it's actually worked out fine for them. All right. So these are relatively conservative estimates for the express line because it's so consistent. However, I would not suggest you being too aggressive, but that risk is going to be up to you. UK has been doing great. It's always been amazing. 4 to 7 days, calendar days again. Germany, 6 to 13 days. France has been quite good, actually. Canada Express has been Canada has been kind of just slow overall, and you see all the other countries. So I won't go into detail of all these dates, but as you see, from using the Express lines, you actually have pretty decent Christmas cutoffs, especially for the UK. These are actually really nice cutoffs. If you're talking about like US shipping, for example, if you use like USPS, if you use like USPS first class, like using ship off, for example, they're going to start telling you like they suggest you cut off your Christmas shipping right around this time. All right. So, this is actually quite reasonable shipping from China. And as you see, it gives you quite a bit of time afterwards. Yeah, there's a comment here. Yeah, so customized print on demand products and use UniExpress. Our supplier is based out of Hangzhou. They have already told us not to commit to Christmas deliveries. Yes, that is a very, very good point. If you're selling POD products, if you're selling customized products, if you're selling products that you can't pre-stock, do not commit to Christmas delivery, like probably starting now, unless you have a batch that is already getting created. And also your supplier is based out of Hangzhou. Hangzhou is going to be a little bit slower than these times as well, and they don't have access to the express line. So yes, if you're doing POD, if your supplier is not based out of Shenzhen, you want to be very wary of these cutoffs. All right, so now the regular lines, which is the vast majority of what our clients are going to use. This is still not terrible. The US is still 7 to 15 days. Now, I want to make one specific note here is that UniExpress, no other kind of direct shipping services, they reach Hawaii and Alaska. So for Hawaii and Alaska, you have to use US ePacket. Now, US ePacket has been all over the place. It's super inconsistent, unfortunately, but unfortunately, it is the only method for Hawaii and Alaska. Now, I think this is a pretty conservative range. I think it's going to be a little bit better than this. However, you see that by our calculations, this actually means that for Hawaii and Alaska orders, the Christmas cutoffs are going to be actually a few days ago already. So I do suggest that if you are selling to the US, if you are guaranteeing Christmas delivery, if you're using Unit Express, that you manage expectations as well, that Hawaii and Alaska, those states, that they are going to take much longer and may not possibly arrive in time for Christmas. Those are not very big markets anyways. However, you do not want a whole bunch of angry customers from there. But again, I'm not going to go through all of this data, but as you see, these are going to be, these cutoffs are going to be a few days before the express cutoffs. I mean, I think especially relevant is the US here. Using the regular line, you're looking at 12:05 in terms of a cutoff, whereas the express line, you're looking at a 12:11. So obviously there's quite a big difference. And this is one of the reasons I was saying that as you're looking at this, you really want to consider that does it actually make sense for your margins? Does it make sense for your target shipping dates to update upgrade your shipping lines for certain countries? And I'm just going to just scroll through all of these. Again, if you want this document, type notes below so that you can actually get these details. But as we scan through these, the good news is that for the vast majority of these countries, Switzerland is a little bit of an outlier here, but for the vast majority of these countries, the Christmas cutoffs are actually after Black Friday sales, sometimes immediately after. So for example, Italy regular, the cutoff, suggested cutoff at least, is 11/30, which is 2 days after. Actually, it's just 1 day after Cyber Monday. So for these countries that say like 11/30, for example, make sure you have stock through Black Friday sales, so that after Black Friday sales, hopefully you do very, very well. They can actually ship out in time so that they should be arriving in time for Christmas. Australia, I will just note, is kind of a little bit of a unique situation because as you see, it can be quite fast, but also it can be quite slow as well. Australia is rather unique because it's a very large country, obviously, as a lot of folks know. A lot of these longer times are going to be in the outskirts of the region as well. And COVID supply chain disruptions have not helped this situation at all. So Australia is something you want to be aware of, but just note that this is a little bit of a skewed picture because most of the main regions are going to get it actually much faster than this. However, you do obviously want to consider for some of the slower regions. And just quickly scan through this. And again, some of these countries, we do not really have enough data to have have a lot of confidence in the delivery timing, like Saudi Arabia, Chile, Turkey. I mean, these are actually very new lines. Latvia, there's very little order volume going out there. So a lot of these countries, unfortunately, we do not have perfect data, and I don't want to share with you something that we don't have full confidence under. All right, so those are the regular lines that we use. And then just a brief overview of the ordinary lines that we use. So this is the Unit Express Ordinary. Some people call it the economy line. It does not take battery products. These are something that, as you actually see here, in the last month or so, the ordinary line versus the regular line has actually been somewhat pretty close, actually. Like, so for example, the US has been 7 to 15 days on the ordinary line versus 7 to 15 days on the regular line. This is actually why before Q4 peak season, we actually suggested that if your product can actually use the ordinary line, which means no batteries, by the way, the ordinary line cannot take any battery products, that you could actually use the ordinary line because the time expectation is quite similar. However, the difference is that we added a different buffer because here you see that the US 90% for the regular line is, we suggest the cutoff being on December 5th. Whereas the ordinary line, we considered 12/04. because we do actually add an additional buffer on the ordinary lines, because we know that every year the ordinary line tends to be deprioritized versus the regular line. And that's why we add a little bit more room here. Now, there is a possibility, especially on the ordinary line, that we might need to adjust this model as we get more information, as there is more data to suggest otherwise. So just keep in mind that these might suffer a little bit more. So generally speaking, to my point before, is if you can actually afford it, if you want to squeeze out some more days of guaranteed Christmas delivery, you do want to look at this data and probably your COGS as well to decide if you want to upgrade to the regular line, and particularly if you want to upgrade to the express line. All right, so here is data sheets for 4PX and Sun as well. So this is actually kind of a special 4PX line that we use. So this is actually not even the normal 4PX line. This is actually a somewhat more express version of the 4PX line. So if for anyone not working with us, by the way, do not assume that this is actually just all 4PX. This is one of the more expensive special 4PX lines that we use for some sensitive and some slightly overweight products that UniExpress cannot send, and Sun we only use really for liquid products, for example, that are quite sensitive. So again, I won't go over this in detail, but here are all the tables here for everyone to go over if you like. All right, so yeah, so again, if you want these notes, please comment below. Comment notes below, and Camilla is going to send these to you. And again, if you are a current client, you should have this already. If you do not have this for whatever reason, make sure to ask or check in your account management group. All right, so that was a lot of data. I know it's kind of a little bit of a not too exciting topic, especially as you're thinking about hopefully very big Black Friday sales. However, this is so incredibly important. And I want to just reiterate on this point after we went over this data, is that you really want to proactively message your customers about shipping expectations. Do not guarantee Christmas shipping if you're not confident it's going to arrive. Trust me here, especially if you're doing good volume. If you have a lot of unhappy customers who were not met in terms of their shipping expectations, you're going to have so many issues with refunds, chargebacks. It could really just kill your business, and it's just really not worth it. And it's just because that it's not going to arrive by Christmas is not going to kill your business as much as all of the issues you're going to have if you promise Christmas delivery and it's not going to arrive. All right, so nothing else. I think that we're good to go here. I hope you guys found this useful. Again, if you want this announcement, comment notes below, and Camilla is going to send it out to you. And nothing else though. Happy Thanksgiving to all of those in the US, or anyone who celebrates it. And good luck everyone who is in e-commerce, and hope you guys have a very successful Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales season. All right, again, this is Dayu. Hope that was helpful. I'll be back next week with some updates as well. See you guys later. Bye.